All right, we're about to go on this incredible journey deep into our own past to uncover the hidden connections inside the animal kingdom. And we're going to do this by tracing the very first, most fundamental steps in our shared evolutionary story. So let's dive right in. Okay, I know, it sounds like the beginning of a really weird joke, but I promise it's not. What could a person, us, possibly share with a spiny, five-armed creature from the bottom of the ocean? Just hold that thought, because the answer reveals something absolutely fundamental about who we are and where we all come from. So, before we start climbing up all the different branches of this family tree, let's just make sure we've got our roots straight. What exactly makes an animal an animal? Well, it turns out it all comes down to a few core traits that unite every single one of us. Yeah, so whether you're talking about a tiny sponge or a massive blue whale, we're all made of many cells. And those cells, they don't have the rigid walls you'd find in a plant. We also can't make our own food. We're heterotrophs, meaning we have to eat. And at some point in our lives, every single one of us can move. This simple checklist, that's our starting point. Okay, here's where the story gets really, really interesting. Super early in the history of animal life, this huge split happened. You gotta picture it like a fundamental fork in the evolutionary road. A choice that sent life hurtling down two profoundly different developmental paths. And this great divide, it all comes down to a critical event in the first few days of an embryo's life. It's a process called gastrulation. Basically, a little ball of cells folds in on itself, creating an opening. That first little opening is called the blastopore. And what happens to it, well, that determines everything. To make this super simple, just imagine you're digging a tunnel that's going to become a digestive tract. There are really only two ways you could do it, right? You could start digging at what will become the entrance, the mouth, or you could start at what's going to become the exit, the anus. Nature, it turns out, tried both ways. And this brings us to the two great animal supergroups. On one side, you have the protostomes, which literally means mouth first. In this group, that first opening, the blastopore, becomes the mouth. But on the other side, you've got the deuterostomes, or mouth second. For them, that first opening becomes the anus, and the mouth forms way later. This one tiny difference set the stage for two completely separate evolutionary sagas. So let's follow that first path. We're going to explore the protostomes, the mouth-first animals. And let me tell you, this group is an unbelievable story of evolutionary success and just wild diversification. So as our family tree starts to take shape, you can see the first major branch splitting off from our common ancestor. This is the protostome line, a massive ancient group that just went on to conquer pretty much every habitat on planet Earth. And when we talk about success in this group, one phylum just stands head and shoulders above all the rest. I'm talking about the arthropods. You know them? These are the insects, the spiders, scorpions, crabs, lobsters. They are the very definition of an evolutionary triumph. So what was their secret? How did they do it? Well, they basically evolved this brilliant toolkit. They've got a hard exoskeleton that's like a suit of armor. Their bodies are segmented, which allows for incredible specialization. And those jointed limbs, they could be adapted for anything. Walking, flying, swimming, grabbing prey, you name it. Now, to really understand the sheer scale of their success, get a load of this. Over 80% of all known animal species on Earth are arthropods. Just let that sink in. For every 5 animal species you can think of, 4 of them belong to this one group. It's just staggering. But of course, arthropods aren't the whole story. The mouth-first lineage also gave us the incredibly diverse mollusks. We're talking everything from garden snails to giant squids, and the annelids, the familiar segmented worms like the good old earthworm. Okay, but what about that other path from the fork in the road? Let's trace that second great branch, the deuterostomes. This is the mouth second club, and as you might have guessed by now, it's our club. So our tree now splits again. We see the deuterostome branch running right alongside the protostomes. This whole lineage represents a completely different answer to that early embryonic question. For them, the developmental tunnel starts at the exit. And this brings us right back to our opening question. That sea star? It's an echinoderm. And guess what? Echinoderms are deuterostomes, just like us. So what do you have in common with a sea star? We share a deep fundamental ancestral blueprint. We are cousins on the same great branch of the family tree, way more closely related to them than we are to an insect or an octopus. Wild, right? So we've found our major lineage, which means it's time for the final step.
Let's zoom right into our specific corner of the Deuterostome branch to find our own phylum, the chordates, and finally place ourselves in this grand story.
And there it is. A smaller branch splits off from that Deuterostome line, and that leads to the phylum Chordata. This is our home group. This includes every animal with a backbone, from fish and frogs to dinosaurs and, yep, eventually us. So what makes a chordate a chordate? It's a set of 4 key features that we all share, at least when we're embryos. We have a notochord, think of it like a primitive backbone, a dorsal nerve cord, which becomes our spinal cord, pharyngeal slits, which for fish become gills, but for us become parts of our ear and neck, and a postanal tail. Yep, even you had a little tail for a while. This shared blueprint is the signature of our entire phylum. I mean, our history is literally written in the rocks. From the very first supportive notochords over 500 million years ago, to the evolution of a bony spine, the development of jaws, and then finally, that monumental step when our ancestors crawled out onto land. It is an absolutely epic story, hundreds of millions of years in the making. Ultimately, understanding this tree isn't just about memorizing a bunch of complicated names. It's about seeing the deep and honestly beautiful interconnections. Every animal from a beetle to a sea star to us is a single thread woven into the same magnificent evolutionary tapestry. And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. We've just traced a history that spans over 500 million years. So, looking forward, what does the next 500 million hold? What new forms of life? What new evolutionary paths are maybe just beginning to branch off today?